Imagine, just for a moment, being the parent of a small child whose innocent laughter is so often shattered by the sudden, violent onset of seizures. Each day, you wake up with a knot of anxiety, never knowing when the next episode will strike. The unpredictability is suffocating. Will it happen at home, in the car, at school? Will this seizure be the one that causes irreversible harm? Or, in the most nightmarish scenario, results in loss? For thousands of families worldwide, this is not a passing fear, but the unyielding reality of living with Dravet syndrome, a devastating, relentless, and often deadly form of childhood epilepsy that has haunted the medical community for decades. But what if, after years of heartbreak and frustration, a scientific breakthrough could finally offer hope to those who have been told, generation after generation, that there is little medicine can do? Dravet syndrome is merciless in its timing. It strikes in infancy, typically before a child has even celebrated their first birthday. A seemingly healthy, thriving baby, eyes bright with promise, suddenly begins to suffer from prolonged, unprovoked seizures. These episodes often last longer than 30 minutes, and sometimes stretch into what physicians call status epilepticus, a medical emergency. What makes this condition even more terrifying is its resistance to nearly every traditional anti-seizure medication in a doctor's arsenal. The seizures are just the beginning. Children with Dravet syndrome are at high risk for significant developmental delays. Many never learn to speak or walk or interact with their environment in the way their peers do. Behavioral challenges mount as the years pass, with a substantial portion of these children displaying symptoms along the autism spectrum. Some struggle with aggression or self-injury. Others retreat inward, becoming less responsive to the world around them. But hovering above all of these daily struggles is an even darker threat: sudden unexpected death in epilepsy, or SUDEPs. Studies have estimated that between 15 and 20% of children with Dravet syndrome, that is, as many as 1 in 5, will die suddenly, often in their sleep, without warning or explanation. Imagine the constant fear that robs families of peace, night after night. This is not just a disease. It is an ever-present shadow over every family milestone, every birthday, every quiet moment. To fully grasp the scale of this crisis, let's zoom out. Globally, it is estimated that as many as 38,000 individuals, most of them children, are living with Dravet syndrome across the United States, the United Kingdom, the largest European countries including France, Germany, Italy, and Spain, as well as Japan. Yet these numbers only hint at the true impact. Each diagnosis ripples outward, affecting parents, siblings, grandparents, teachers, and entire communities. The emotional burden is immeasurable, and the psychological toll, manifesting as chronic stress, depression, and anxiety, can be crushing. Financial strain is another relentless adversary for these families. Traditional therapies have, for years, offered little more than a tenuous lifeline. Most children are prescribed a complex cocktail of anti-seizure drugs, sometimes 4 or 5 at once. As Dr. Andreas Brunklaus, a leading pediatric neurologist and clinical researcher at the Royal Hospital for Children in Glasgow, has said, natural history data shows the limitations of treating this disease with anti-seizure medicines. In practical terms, these medications often fail to provide lasting relief, and their side effects can be just as debilitating as the disease itself, ranging from drowsiness and cognitive dulling to mood swings and liver toxicity. Many parents are forced to become full-time caregivers, monitoring every aspect of their child's life. They track breathing, sleep, temperature, and even the smallest changes in behavior, always ready to administer rescue medications or call for emergency help. Social isolation becomes the norm. Outings and playdates are fraught with danger, so families often withdraw from community life. The financial costs add up quickly. Medical bills, therapy sessions, specialized equipment, home modifications, and lost income from parents who are unable to work. In some cases, families face bankruptcy. The mental health impact, especially for siblings, who may feel neglected or overwhelmed, is profound and often overlooked. Yet, as bleak as this landscape may seem, there is now a beacon of hope shining through the darkness, driven by an extraordinary partnership between 2 major players in biotechnology, Biogen and Stoke Therapeutics. Together, they are developing an experimental drug called zorevunercanacin. But this is not just another attempt to manage symptoms. It represents a fundamentally new approach. Zorevunercanacin is what scientists call an antisense oligonucleotide, or ASO. Instead of merely dampening the hyperactive neurons responsible for seizures, It targets the very genetic root of Dravet syndrome, a mutation in the SCN1A gene that disrupts the function of sodium channels in the brain, setting off the cascade of seizures and neurodevelopmental decline. Let's pause to appreciate the magnitude of this shift. For decades, epilepsy drugs have been about controlling symptoms, not causes. Zorevunersen is designed to increase the production of the Nav1.1 protein, which is deficient in children with Dravet syndrome. This is precision medicine at its boldest, an effort to repair the underlying biological blueprint, rather than simply managing the chaos it creates. The science behind antisense oligonucleotides is both elegant and powerful. These molecules bind to RNA, influencing how genes are expressed, and making it possible to increase or decrease the production of specific proteins. The early clinical trial data for zorevunersen is nothing short of remarkable. After roughly 68 weeks of treatment, well over a year, children in the study experienced measurable improvements not just in how often they had seizures, but also in their cognitive and behavioral development. In fact, initial data revealed a stunning median reduction of about 85% in seizure frequency after just 3 months of treatment. For families accustomed to several seizures per day, this is revolutionary. Some parents have reported that their children became more alert, started to interact more, and, in some cases, learned new words or skills that once seemed unattainable. These are not just numbers on a chart. They represent real milestones, real progress, and renewed hope. The excitement within the medical and biotech communities soared when Biogen, a company with a storied history in rare diseases and neurological disorders, secured the global rights to zorevunersen from Stoke Therapeutics. The deal itself was substantial. Biogen paid an upfront sum of $165 million, with the potential for an additional $385 million in milestone payments if the drug meets certain development and commercial goals. If all goes well, the total deal could surpass $500 million. A vivid demonstration of Biogen's confidence in this therapy and its broader commitment to neurological innovation. For Biogen, this is more than just a business transaction. It is a strategic pivot. The company is under increasing pressure as its flagship therapies for spinal muscular atrophy and multiple sclerosis face mounting competition and the threat of generic alternatives. Its recent Alzheimer's treatment, Leqembi, launched in partnership with Eisai, has struggled to gain traction. To revitalize its research and development pipeline, Biogen has spent billions in acquisitions, most notably acquiring rare disease leader Reata for over $7 billion in the year 2023 and purchasing immunology specialist HiBio for more than $1 billion. But it is the zorevunersen platform and the future of gene-targeted therapies it represents that now sits at the heart of Biogen's vision for reclaiming leadership in neuroscience. Yet, hope is tempered by the many hurdles that remain. The journey from promising clinical data to an approved, widely available medicine is fraught with risk, particularly in rare diseases where patient populations are small and every individual outcome matters. The pivotal Phase 3 Emperor trial of zorevunersen is expected to begin soon, but results are not anticipated until the latter half of the year 2027. Until then, families, clinicians, researchers, and investors remain in suspense, scrutinizing every new data release for both promise and potential pitfalls. What could happen if zorevunersen lives up to its early promise? Experts such as Dr. Catherine Dawson, a leading voice in neurogenetics, believe this could become the first medicine to truly modify the course of Dravet syndrome, not simply mask its symptoms. If the Emperor trial demonstrates strong efficacy and safety, families may witness more than just a reduction in seizures. Children might reach developmental milestones once thought out of reach, speaking their first words, walking unaided, or even attending school regularly. Such progress would represent a seismic shift, not just for individual families, but for the entire landscape of neurological disorder treatment. But the road ahead is complex. The Emperor trial is a massive, multinational effort with rigorous standards for measuring both effectiveness and safety over several years. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration has granted zorevunersen both rare pediatric disease designation and breakthrough therapy status, which should expedite the regulatory process. However, regulators are acutely aware of the need for long-term safety data, especially for very young children whose brains are still developing and who may be vulnerable to unforeseen side effects. The history of medicine is filled with examples of early excitement giving way to disappointment when longer-term risks emerge. Economic considerations loom large. Biogen's initial investment of over $165 million, with the possibility of spending nearly $500 million, underscores the high financial stakes. With approximately 38,000 potential patients in North America, Europe, and Japan, the market is both promising and fiercely contested. Other companies, such as Encoded Therapeutics, are developing rival gene therapies like ETX-101, which could soon enter clinical trials. These next-generation therapies promise even more targeted approaches, and perhaps a true cure. This raises a fundamental question. Will insurance companies and national health systems be willing to cover the high costs of these innovative drugs? Historically, breakthrough therapies for rare diseases have often faced resistance from payers, who must balance the needs of a small patient population against the constraints of limited healthcare resources. The price tag for gene-targeted therapies can easily run into the millions of dollars per patient. Will families be able to access these potentially life-changing treatments, or will cost become an insurmountable barrier, deepening the divide between those who can and cannot afford cutting-edge care? The risk of disappointment is ever present. The history of drug development is littered with stories of promising candidates that failed in large-scale trials. Even with an 85% reduction in seizure frequency in preliminary studies, the ultimate test is durability. Can these gains be sustained over years, not just months? And will the benefits extend to all children with Dravet syndrome, given the genetic and biological diversity of the condition? Some children may respond differently based on the specific nature of their SCN1A mutation or other underlying health factors. Long-term safety, particularly regarding the impact on brain development, remains a paramount concern. Despite these uncertainties, the emergence of zorevunersen marks a profound philosophical shift in medicine, from symptom management to root cause intervention. For those interested in global health, biotechnology, and the economics of medical innovation, this story is about more than just a single drug. It is a live experiment in how science, commercial risk, and the needs of vulnerable communities can intersect to drive progress. There is also a broader context. The rise of gene-targeted and precision therapies is transforming all of medicine, not just neurology. In oncology, for example, the last decade has seen the arrival of drugs that target specific mutations, greatly improving survival rates and quality of life. Now, similar approaches are being developed for genetic neurological diseases, rare metabolic disorders, and even some infectious diseases. This new paradigm is reshaping how research is funded, how careers in science are built, and how patients and their families engage with the healthcare system. The economic ripple effects are enormous, as entire industries emerge to support the development, manufacturing, and delivery of these complex therapies. For families affected by Dravet syndrome, these changes are deeply personal. Early and accurate diagnosis is more vital than ever, as emphasized by advocates like Marianne Maseskis, who has dedicated her career to supporting families with rare epilepsies. Participation in clinical trials, support for patient registries, and engagement with advocacy organizations can all help to accelerate progress, not just for individual children, but for the field as a whole. The voices of parents, doctors, and researchers are essential in shaping the regulatory and policy landscape, ensuring that innovation leads to real-world benefits. Healthcare professionals face new responsibilities and opportunities. The rapid pace of genetic research means that diseases once considered untreatable may soon have real solutions. It is crucial for clinicians to stay informed, educate families, support early enrollment in studies, and collaborate across specialties. Genetic counselors and specialized nurses now play an increasingly important role in guiding families through complex decisions. For investors and policymakers, the story of zorevunersen encapsulates the challenges and opportunities facing the biopharmaceutical industry in the 21st century. Developing disease-modifying treatments for rare diseases is expensive, risky, and inherently uncertain. But the potential rewards, both financial and humanitarian, are immense. The ripple effects of breakthroughs like zorevunersen could inspire new waves of research, investment, and regulatory reform that extend far beyond Dravet syndrome itself. What happens if zorevunersen fails to deliver? History reminds us that not every promising drug succeeds. Yet, even failed trials generate invaluable knowledge, laying the groundwork for future innovations. Lessons learned from studying rare diseases often illuminate new approaches for more common conditions, creating a feedback loop that benefits all of medicine. And for families living with Dravet syndrome, even incremental progress, a few fewer seizures, a bit more cognitive clarity, can be life-changing. Returning to the present, the early data for zorevunersen is perhaps the most hopeful sign the Dravet community has seen in decades. For families who have watched their children endure relentless seizures and developmental setbacks, this is a moment, as Dr. Andreas Brunklaus puts it, of cautious optimism. He says, "For the first time, we are not just controlling seizures, we may be rewriting the future for these children." But here's another secret. The technology behind zoravunirfacin is not limited to Dravet syndrome. If successful, it could serve as a blueprint for genetically targeted therapies for a vast range of neurological disorders, from other rare epilepsies to more common conditions like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's diseases. Imagine a world where diseases once considered untreatable suddenly become manageable, or even curable, thanks to medicines that correct the very genetic instructions at their core. This vision, though still on the horizon, is now within reach. The global implications are vast. As more gene-targeted drugs enter the market, we may see a fundamental shift in how medicine is practiced, how healthcare is financed, and how societies care for their most vulnerable. This revolution will require not only scientific innovation, but also new models of partnership among industry, governments, and patient organizations. Regulatory agencies will need to adapt, and payers must reconsider how value is measured and reimbursed. So what can you do if you are a parent, an advocate, a healthcare professional, or simply a concerned citizen? Stay informed. The pace of discovery in genetic medicine is accelerating at a breathtaking rate. Follow clinical trial developments. Support policies that promote access and affordability. Participate in rare disease registries or advocacy groups. Every voice, every action, every story matters. And even if you are outside the world of medicine, consider this. The economic and social ripples from breakthroughs like zoravunirfacin may well touch your life too. These innovations are reshaping the biotechnology industry, creating new jobs, and driving waves of investment that could fuel the next era of medical progress. They also raise important ethical questions about access, equity, and the role of science in society. As we watch the story of zoravunirfacin unfold, one question remains. Will this be the decade when gene therapies finally conquer rare diseases? The answer is still uncertain, but for thousands of families living with Dravet syndrome, there is, at last, a genuine reason to hope and to dream bigger than ever before. Stay ahead of the curve by subscribing to our channel, hitting the bell for notifications, and sharing your thoughts in the comments below. Do you believe the future of medicine lies in gene therapies? Could this be the turning point for rare diseases, and perhaps even for common conditions? Your perspective matters. Join the